This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Make another smart choice with Auto Quote Explorer to compare rates from multiple car insurance companies all at once. Try it at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
At the UPS Store, we want to make this summer the summer of shipping. Summer Ship-a-Looza. So you can start crossing items off your must-ship list. Like the vintage film camera your college kid needs for class. Or the vase you told your mom you would send her ages ago. And with our pack and ship guarantee, your items arrive safe or we reimburse you. So stop by your local store today for everything you need to be unstoppable. Visit the upsstore.com/guarantee for full details. Available at participating locations. Most locations are independently owned. Product, services, pricing, and hours of operation may vary. See Center for details. The UPS Store. Be unstoppable.
Welcome to How To. I'm Courtney Martin. I'm sure all of you listeners out there have a busy friend, right? You know the type. They seemingly have 3 jobs, a full family life, a ton of responsibilities. And yet, every time you check on them, they're going on these amazing side quests. They've learned a new instrument, or just run an ultra, or restored an old coffee table. And I mean, it is impressive, but you gotta wonder, how do they find the time? Well, I have a dear friend like this, and I want you to meet her.
My name is Kate Levitt. I am a working parent in San Francisco, California. I am an education and nonprofit leader. I also have 3 kids. I'm like solidly middle-aged, turning 45 in just a few weeks, but feeling very much that sort of lovely middle of life, having done a lot and still very excited about everything there is to do. I'm a DJ, I'm a community organizer, I'm a caregiver, many things, kind of self-proclaimed maximalist here.
I love this introduction, but honestly, Kate is being a little modest. She's one of the most interesting people I know. She's civically engaged, the one hosting the block parties and running the PTA to make sure it's more equitable. She's intellectually engaged, the one who always has tickets to the coolest lectures coming to town. But she's not just a nerd. She's legitimately cool, too. She's a DJ, for God's sake, and a dancer who hasn't missed Carnival in years. She loves Halloween and always does the most elaborate costumes. And she's an incredible cook, always showing up to the potluck with a heaping pile of homemade grape leaves or an incredible Cuban dish. Okay, I could go on for a while, obviously, for the rest of the episode, but essentially, this is the point. Kate has zest for participating in life to the absolute fullest.
I was always insatiably curious, and I loved saying yes to things, even as like a preschooler. I wanted to do the play. I wanted to do gymnastics. I wanted to do dance. I wanted to explore everything. And it has really been a part of, I think, my whole life. It makes me feel whole and brings me a lot of joy throughout elementary school, high school, college, and now, as an adult and parent. And as fulfilling and I think joyful as it makes me to do so many different kinds of things, the shadow side of it, the darker side of it, is that it can lead to a burnout. My dad likes to say all the time, burning the candle at both ends.
To give you an idea of just how fast Kate is burning up that 2-sided candle, listen to a rundown of a recent day.
Okay, so I dance in Carnival here in San Francisco. And so I'm like waking up, rushing to my dance rehearsal, come home, realize, oh my God, like my child is graduating from elementary school and she really wants a new dress for that. So I like rush her off to the mall. I was the PTA president for a couple years, and I'm like returning phone calls while driving back from the mall, while still like sweaty and disgusting from my dance rehearsal, come home and check in on my mother-in-law, who is dependent on us for most of her care and lives about a mile away. So rush over there, make sure she has food, then walk the dog, then
The dog who has cancer.
the dog who has cancer and just had surgery and who also needs a lot of love and care. And then realize, oh my God, like we have no idea what we're making for dinner. I haven't talked to my husband in like 48 hours. And, you know, I haven't even thought about like my work emails and all of the deadlines coming up for like the job that pays the bills for us. And it's Sunday night and I'm just like sitting in the car, taking a moment and like trying not to just scream and like breathe through and figure out like, how am I going to do it all?
How would you describe the emotional experience of a moment like that? Like, what are you feeling?
I'm feeling such a mix of things. On the one hand, like, oh, how cool, like I got to do all of this. And on the other hand, simmering rage about just the over obligations and over commitment of that moment. And then I think there's also this feeling of numbness or like, I just have to put my head down and get through this. So it really is this feeling of like juggling delicate porcelain plates, freaking out, trying not to have it all come crashing down.
Kate is dealing with such an interesting paradox here, and one that I think a lot of people can relate to. When you have so much going on, how do you dial it back? Especially, by the way, when dialing it back might mean sacrificing non-essential things, which tend to be the things that bring you joy and help define you outside of your professional or familial roles. It's that stuff that we often feel most compelled to put on the chopping block.
It's just feeling like really unsustainable. And I feel like I'm not giving the best of myself to the people that I'm closest with or care about. Even though I feel like I'm showing up for them in a lot of ways, I feel spread out a little too thin. And even beyond that, and maybe like the biggest impact is feeling like there's a deficit in my presence with myself. And I think that's really what I'm trying to think through right now. It's like I hear about like the joy of missing out and saying no to things and, you know, accepting and embracing the loss that comes with that. I just honestly don't even know how to make those decisions about like what matters more and what matters less and what would still make me feel whole. I don't know if I'm explaining myself well here, but it really feels like a kind of lack of connection with myself.
So today's show is a conversation about how to stop burning the candle at both ends, sure, but it's also about why we even lit the second end in the first place. And why are we still using candles, people? Okay, but seriously, we will talk about prioritizing activities to ensure that the things that bring you joy don't get lost. And we'll also talk about slowing down and giving yourself a mental break. Oh yeah, and our expert this week suggests a mental exercise that is kind of wild. You won't want to miss it. Stick around.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
This episode is brought to you by Built. Built is the perfect rewards program for those looking to earn airline miles and hotel points just by paying rent on time. There's no cost to join, and just by paying rent, you unlock flexible points that can be transferred to your favorite hotels and airlines, a future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, and more. And when you pay rent through Built, you unlock two powerful benefits. First, you earn one of the industry's most valuable points on rent every month. Second, you gain access to exclusive neighborhood benefits in your city. Built's neighborhood benefits are things like extra points on dining out, complimentary post-workout shakes, free mats or towels at your favorite fitness studios, and unique experiences that only Built members can access. And when you're ready to travel, Bilt points can be converted to your favorite miles and hotel points around the world, meaning your rent can literally take you places. Start paying rent through Bilt and take advantage of your neighborhood benefits by going to joinbilt.com/howto. That's JOINBILT.com/howto. Make sure to use joinbilt.com/howto to sign up for Bilt today. This episode is brought to you by Bilt. Bilt is the perfect rewards program for those looking to earn airline miles and hotel points just by paying rent on time. There's no cost to join, and just by paying rent, you unlock flexible points that can be transferred to your favorite hotels and airlines, a future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, and more. And when you pay rent through Bilt, you unlock two powerful benefits. First, you earn one of the industry's most valuable points on rent every month. Second, you gain access to exclusive neighborhood benefits in your city. Bilt's neighborhood benefits are things like extra points on dining out, complimentary post-workout shakes, free mats or towels at your favorite fitness studios, and unique experiences that only Bilt members can access. And when you're ready to travel, Bilt points can be converted to your favorite miles and hotel points around the world, meaning your rent can literally take you places. Start paying rent through Bilt and take advantage of your neighborhood benefits by going to joinbilt.com/howto. That's JOINBILT.com/howto. Make sure to use joinbilt.com/howto to sign up for Bilt today.
This is How To. I'm Courtney Martin. So we've met Kate and heard a little about her very busy life. So it's now time to meet this week's expert. Oliver Burkeman is the author of the popular book 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals. His most recent book is called Meditations for Mortals.
I trained as a journalist. My first jobs were with the Guardian newspaper in London. I very early on started doing a political theory PhD that I swiftly abandoned. And then all my sort of career choices from then on were sort of organized around wanting specifically to be able to write. I ended up writing more and more about psychology, psychotherapy. The science of happiness was the term that was used when I got started, and productivity in both its kind of positive and negative connotations. I think a lot of it originally was a way to sort of explore subjects that I would feel embarrassed to explore otherwise or something. You know, there's a sort of an alibi involved with saying, well, I'm reading this book about self-compassion for work, not because I need some of it. But I sort of went on a journey from cynicism to more sincerity as I did that and got more comfortable with kind of exploring this stuff for myself. And then 4,000 Weeks, the book before last, was really the thing that emerged from feeling like I'd tested out so many of self-help culture's methods for finally feeling in control and on top of your life and like everything is sorted out. I tested so many of these without finding any that worked in the way that I apparently needed them to, that I started to like look more closely at what this need to feel like you've sorted things out and that you're on top of everything even is. And long story short, I think ultimately it is an attempt to outrun or escape our built-in limitations as humans, and that there's a lot more to be said for the sort of ongoing and uncomfortable and difficult but very rewarding work of trying to sort of fully inhabit those limitations rather than escape them, which is just a recipe for a life of anxiety and postponing the real meaning of life to some moment in the future that never quite arrives.
Now, when Oliver talks about built-in human limitations, one of the things he's talking about is sobering. It's right there in Oliver's book title. 4,000 weeks is approximately the average human lifespan. Kate, I want to say, I looked it up. You're turning 45 at the end of the month. You've basically lived about 2,400 of your possibly 4,000 weeks, which is part of sort of Oliver's sobriety test for all of us. It's like, you know,
and I rounded that number down to get the zeros right. And women tend to live longer than men and all sorts of things. So you don't need to, please don't take that number.
But I think you framed it, Kate, as sort of this prime of your life moment. And I think that's really special. Like, oh, wow, what a cool moment to be really thinking deeply about these things. So, yeah. Kate, how do you feel about Oliver's invocation of limitations?
I have a complicated relationship with limitations. I understand theoretically the importance of limitations, and I know that I can't do everything.
So yes, the first limitation is time. Oliver is definitely not the first person to point out that life is finite, which means we often feel this pressure to do everything now, and we feel regret, envy, or guilt over the things we don't do. But Oliver argues that there's actually beauty in accepting you can't do everything in a lifetime, and certainly you can't do everything all at once.
When you get so much satisfaction and joy from all of these different parts of your life, where do you start to draw the line, and how can you reframe it so that it feels more like a phased limitation, so that you can kind of move through it in a more fluid way, as opposed to like, I'm saying no to this and it's this definitive kind of loss or missing out that feels irreconcilable.
Oliver, it reminds me of your writing about recuperation, that like we can go after life really hard as long as we build in wise seasons of recuperation. Can you talk a little bit about that, maybe?
I just think seasonality in itself is such an interesting idea here. It's not just that if we decided to pull back on a certain area of life for a few months, that it's not that we just have to make ourselves never do it again. It's this sort of feeling of lack of self-trust, right? That you might just completely forget that it was an important part of life, or that you might just sort of accidentally slip into never giving it any of your attention. And so I think the seasonality thing is a really great way of saying, look, for the next however long, for these months, and you can literally like put a marker in your calendar or on your year planner that says like, 3 months out from now, think about whether I want to register for a marathon, or think about the amount of time I'm giving to this set of friendships or whatever. And then you can pull back from that thing, sort of safe in the knowledge that it doesn't have to be forever, that if it's the wrong decision, you'll be able to change that decision. It's just a question of sort of where you place the center of effort in the knowledge that it's not forever. And that in itself is an acknowledgement of limitation, right? Of course, on some secret level in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, and if I follow this system, I'll be able to do absolutely everything at 100% excellence. But you can't do that. What you can do is just develop that sense of a rhythm and of patience that enables you to sort of do all the different things, and also to sort of use one of them as recuperation from the other one of them in a way. I mean, many working parents talk about arriving at the office as a moment of an opportunity to take a breath, close their eyes, and take right. A couple of sips of coffee. There's no shame in that, as long as it has its role in that broader picture.
Okay, so our first piece of advice is to realize there are simply some limitations we cannot avoid, and then acknowledge that we can't do everything at once. In the moments where you need to scale back, remind yourself that it isn't a permanent thing. You can always pick it back up, and if you're someone for whom out of sight is out of mind, set a calendar appointment for a few weeks, a few months, or even a few years down the line to remind yourself that this was something you wanted to do. So then the next question is, how do you pick what gets scaled back?
I think we do generally want to feel that there is a through line to what we're doing in life, and that we're not just sort of in a completely random and chaotic way throwing our little bits of our time and attention at things. But I think it's really important to distinguish that from a very specific kind of idea that is much more maybe the culture of capitalism, among other things, that suggests like you've got to have a niche or a niche, as I hear some of you Americans
or a brand
sometimes calling
to make it
right,
really gross.
Or a brand. That kind of self-categorization is in many ways antithetical to the feeling of aliveness. It may not work for everyone, but I think sort of navigating by aliveness is something I've personally found more and more useful.
Just to be clear, what Oliver is suggesting here is prioritizing activities by, and I love this, how alive they make you feel. Instead of picking activities because they're easy or can be completed quickly, or because we feel social pressure to do them. Of course, we'll always have certain responsibilities, but we do have more choices than we sometimes realize, and those choices don't have to align with a certain vision of life.
It's so interesting the way you phrase that, Oliver, because I think for the last handful of years, I have often found myself in that question of like, what's wrong with me? What am I doing wrong? So I don't know. It just makes me think a lot about like what attachments am I having to what I'm doing or the time around it and how I'm structuring my time that are maybe if I kind of let go of that a little bit, I can reorient and not see it as a problem that I maybe have a lot of balls in the air, but it's actually, it doesn't have to be coherent. It can just be alive.
Well, and if we use aliveness as the central idea, then the numbness is a problem, right? Because numbness is the opposite of aliveness. So like your emotional experience of it is what matters most, right, Oliver? Would you?
Oh, yeah. And like feeling frazzled is a problem. I equally don't want to go to the opposite pole of saying like, dismiss these questions of there being any problem from your mind and get on with it. I've noticed sort of in the air at the moment, there is this interesting phenomenon where so many of us who fall into this broad category that psychologists call insecure overachievers, which always gets recognition whenever I use that phrase from just about everybody, who's reading or in an audience or something like that. It's a lot of us. There's this idea almost that you should be doing something different than a sort of multifaceted life, that there's something sort of inherently wrong with that it's scattered or something like that. And I don't think you particularly expressed that, but I think it's worth sort of pushing back against that anyway. There's no obligation to build a meaningful life, I would say, around a sort of one central pillar, even if we could also look at what Kate was talking about and figure out that there kind of maybe is a central pillar to do with bringing people together and connecting to people and fostering aliveness in people. Even just within my own work, for example, I could be really obsessively niche focused and say, well, I only write and talk about these two subjects or this one subject, or I could just feel sort of smeared over the world with no coherence. But the thing that has helped me more and more is like, well, does this feel alive to me? Do I think I'm maybe having some small role in helping other people feel alive through talking and writing about it? So I think that kind of coherence is a worthy goal, but it may also be a goal that you've already arrived at without realizing it. Kate.
So if you're feeling scattered, it may help to look for activities that align to a passion or value. But ultimately, you don't have to organize your life around a central pillar. You can try out as many activities as you'd like if they make you feel alive. Just remember that you don't have to try to do everything at once, and make time for recuperation. We'll dive into recuperation and taking a mental break after this break. Don't go anywhere.
The spirit of innovation is deeply ingrained in America, and Google is helping Americans innovate in ways both big and small. Central Texas Regional Mobility Authority is using Google AI to create smarter tolling systems and improve traffic flow for Texans. This is a new era of American innovation. Find out more at g.co/American innovation.
Don't miss Blinds.com's 4th of July mega sale happening now. Save up to 50% plus get a free professional measure. Blinds.com invented a better way to shop for window treatments with upfront pricing, no showroom markups, and no salespeople in your home. Choose from classic shutters to outdoor shades and more, all backed by our 100% satisfaction guarantee. Don't miss Blinds.com's 4th of July mega sale. Save up to 50% plus get a free measure. Rules and restrictions may apply.
We're back with Oliver Burkeman, author of the bestseller 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals, as well as the new book, Meditations for Mortals. We're also joined by my dear friend, Kate, who has an endless list of roles, which is leading to some stress. Kate, do you feel like you give yourself time to recuperate? Like when you imagine opening your Google Calendar right now, is there a time for rest and restoration and kind of having some discernment around some of this stuff Oliver's saying?
No, like I don't look at my calendar and see, oh, I have this time to recuperate. I am also not the kind of person, like I am not super data driven in my own personal life. I'm not somebody who tracks, this, that, and the other of how I'm spending my time or looking at how to optimize things. I'm much more of a feeler. And I think there's a messiness in that maybe is not a bad thing as we're talking it through. Like, I feel like there is this part of our culture that like makes you feel like you have to have everything really in order and defined. And so I don't know, there's a little bit of messiness to it that I don't know if there's recuperation that I find within that, or maybe like a little bit of ease in sometimes just embracing the crazy and the mess.
What I find fascinating about that is like I talk to and write about, and in some ways am one of the, the kind of people who find themselves constantly in life sort of anxiously trying to get through to the part of life where everything feels sorted out and organized and like they are in the driver's seat. I've written a lot, and it's resonated with people about that sort of feeling and what it means to realize that time is maybe never coming and how that could be liberating. But when I listen to you, it almost feels like you're a different kind of person, which is someone who basically is really sort of exuberant in that situation of life not being sorted out, but feels a cultural, a societal, maybe there's a gendered aspect to it as well, like pressure that you ought to be getting it all sorted out. Whereas I'm more familiar, I feel like, with the sense of like, no, I've got to get it sorted out. And it's interesting because I feel like actually the way you describe your life, it's doesn't mean there couldn't be some pulling back from things or some space for rest and recuperation, but it's kind of a extraordinarily committed and engaged and alive and admirable life. I hope I could do, a quarter of that in my contributions to the world.
Oh, that makes me tear up. Kate, how does that feel to hear?
I'm definitely crying right now.
I hope that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. A lot of it comes from like these more external pressures or expectations. I should be branding myself better. I should have a more like linear trajectory of my career. I shouldn't like say yes to all these DJ gigs. What am I doing? I'm 45 years old. Like,
we haven't even talked about the DJing.
I know. Yeah.
She DJs an amazing 90s party once a month, in addition to other things, Oliver. Yeah. If you're ever in the Bay Area, is worth getting to.
Okay.
Come out and dance with us. Yeah. Like, yeah, it's fun. Yeah.
But I don't want to lose track of the numbness and the rage. We don't have to pathologize. I think what we're saying is like there's so much beauty here and so much aliveness. And, Oliver echoed what I, as your friend, feel deeply convinced of, which is that you're living like an incredibly beautiful, engaged life. And I think a lot of listeners, myself included, identify with being in the car and feeling rage and numbness and feeling like, how did I get myself here? It's hard because theoretically, one of the antidotes to that would be having a more intentional, less messy approach to it, right? But we're also arguing like the messiness is beautiful. So I don't know. I just feel like how do we also engage around your emotional experience and so many listeners' emotional experience of like loving their big full lives and also feeling completely overwhelmed and stressed, which is not how you want to spend your weeks, right?
Yeah,
in that emotional state.
That is not the feeling I want to be most connected with. There's a lot of pressure, and I do think it is gendered. Women do tend to carry more of the both emotional and sometimes other kinds of labor. Some of it just feels non-negotiable. That's where I think some of that resentment, anger can bubble up because then I'm still, for me, in my case, still, I'm like refusing to say no to things almost as like an act of resistance to all of the obligations I have, because I just want to claim my whole self so much, because I identify so much with all these other things that I just enjoy doing so fully. And I'm afraid of letting go of any of them, because I'm afraid that like it means I'm letting go of this like very vital part of myself. Maybe there's better ways to have boundaries around it, but I can't have too many limitations because people depend on me.
I've never thought about that part of it is an insistence on your own wholeness, that especially for women, refusing to say no to the creative pursuits, the DJing, the dancing, is part of living in a sexist world and saying like, yes, I will care for my children and do all of the things that women have, been expected to do, but also I refuse to not do the things that make me feel alive in other ways. Oliver, have you noticed gendered differences in your readers and audiences, like the kinds of questions people ask around this?
Absolutely. It's real, the sexism angle on all this completely. And I think that obligation part is maybe particularly interesting, whether through the gendered lens or just generally. This sense of things that you have to do and that you therefore come to resent because you have to do them, kind of regardless of whether you might choose to do them anyway, right? Because then there's that second level where it's like, well, I don't want to feel like I resent the like responsibilities of family life, because in many, many ways they're absolutely terrific. But then the fact that they're obligatory, or they feel obligatory, sort of corrodes them somehow. And also, you get this phenomenon, I certainly feel like I have personal experience of this from the inside, as it were, of feeling that these obligations are things not just that you that your given reality does demand, in fact, that you have to do, which definitely can suck, and can suck especially if it's configured in a sexist way, but also that you kind of have to do in order to earn your right to exist on the planet. You know what I mean? That like you're not minimally worthy of your own self-respect unless you discharge them all. And there, I think there are various interesting resources to draw on in kind of philosophy and various wisdom traditions to sort of, and religion, of course, to sort of say, well, your right to exist is built into the fact that you're here, that none of these things are things you need to do in that respect. That if we want to channel the existentialists, you kind of do have a choice whether to fulfill your obligations to your children and elderly relatives. It's a bit of a strange kind of choice, since no non-pathological person would never make the choice of leaving them to languish. But there's a certain sense in which that is a choice that is being made in accord with your deeper values. And it maybe gets easier to see that against the context of not feeling that you have to sort of earn your right to exist through the fulfillment of these obligations. I don't know if any of that resonates.
I think one of the things I've been trying to unpack in my own life is my attachment to being indispensable. I really like to think I'm the one who can put my kid to bed the way that she needs to be put to bed, and read the story the way she needs the story to be read, or care for my dad who has dementia in a very particular kind of way. And I think there's a lot of ego for it, my own ego at play. And I don't know if that's up for you, Kate, but I just wonder about how you experience obligation. There's something very beautiful about duty and obligation, but then there's also this feeling of trappedness, or a feeling of I have to do this out of an ego place. Does that strike a chord in any way for you?
I think for me, there's certainly a sense of self-worth that I feel very attached to in being caring towards other people, or being of service, or in my role now, that I, feels really wrapped up and tangled in my identity as a human, as a parent. I feel that identity so much. And with those things in my mind, at least, comes a long list of kind of duties that you have to fulfill. And that mostly like give me a sense of real fulfillment, but also take up a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know. I'm not sure how to totally parse it out, but it's like it keeps going back to this feeling of this like wish of wanting to make more hours in the day.
Yeah, which we can't do, but we can do less in a day. I think there are probably a lot of listeners who would like to do less. Kate, do you feel like you would like to do less, or has this conversation made you feel like actually you're feeling pretty good about where you're at?
That's a good question. It feels like a moment to practice saying no, doing less, but it scares me a lot. And
what scares you about it? Do you know?
There's like a comfort that comes in just doing constantly. It's like a sense of purpose, I guess, and grounding. But the slowing down piece feels really hard and
Oliver, did you,
and daunting.
In your research or in your conversations you've had around your work, have you learned anything that helps like a body in motion slow down? Like, are there, like, let's say, very practically, Kate has a weekend coming up where she doesn't schedule anything the whole weekend. How could she think about approaching that time to actually recuperate?
Well, first of all, I think I probably wouldn't go straight for no schedule for the whole weekend. I think I think the importance of sort of incrementalism here is huge. And when you really are talking about literally doing nothing, which is a very useful exercise, I think it's more on the scale of like 10 minutes to experiment with something like that. I invite you to do the specific slowing down thing that I did in the context of my book 4,000 Weeks, which is to go to a local museum, local art gallery, select a painting and look at it for 3 hours without stopping.
3 hours?
I don't need to go into detail about this, but this is a assignment that the Harvard art historian Jennifer Roberts gives to all her incoming students, and she knows, by the way, that that's an insanely long amount of time. That's sort of the point, and it's a really, really interesting kind of hardcore way of seeing what there is to be seen when you really impose upon yourself the restraint that you're not going to move on when you think you're done with it, but when the time has elapsed. That's probably a little extreme. I wonder, I'm not
3
sure.
hours without your phone, I bet.
Right, yeah.
Kate did lose her phone recently, or it got stolen, right, Kate, in Mexico?
Yeah.
And you did describe that as like a great freedom on some level, right?
Oh my God, it was a forced digital detox, whatever they call it. And it was amazing. It was lovely.
So if you, Kate, imagine staring at a painting at SF MoMA, let's say, for 3 hours, what comes up for you?
I mean, my first thought is like, how cool. I mean, how totally ludicrous, but also how cool would it be to like just sit and be with a piece of art for that long. And then I think about it a little more and it makes me feel kind of squirmy. Mm-hmm. And then I think like, what would I actually want to look at for that long? But I think there's like the layer that starts to seep in of like, well, what am I not doing? Like how indulgent to just go into that. And that's funny to me because I don't know why that is like the feeling that comes up for it.
Oliver, are there other, now I'm thinking of them as incremental experiments in indulgence. Are there other ideas that you have for us of like little bite-sized things like that?
I'm really fascinated by this conversation because I do think that most people, maybe not most, but certainly many, and me thinking about that painting exercise prospectively, maybe focus on how uncomfortable it's going to be to give up that sort of control over your time and just have to sit there the whole time. But the idea that it would be indulgent in a way that I take it has a sort of slightly moralizing edge that you shouldn't be just going around indulging yourself is fascinating and proof that any sort of exercise like this will sort of bring up the thing that needs to be brought up. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. In each person's case. It's ways to sort of lean into a certain kind of discomfort when you're fairly confident that the discomfort involved is is one that it would be good for you to sort of metabolize rather than to just avoid. So really, in that context, I mean, it's anything, right? It's writing in a journal for an hour. It's reading a novel for half an hour. It's doing anything. I mean, I suppose one interesting exercise might be to ask, what is it about all the extracurricular things you do currently that doesn't feel indulgent? And I mean, it's not for me to answer, but one guess might be that they all do involve making life better for other people in a rather obvious way. So, putting on my completely uncertified therapist's hat here, I'm wondering if like the specific thing to focus on here, just in small amounts, is whatever it is that you find makes you feel alive and kind of doesn't in any direct or obvious way make life any better for anybody else.
Which brings us back to the beginning. Kate said the drawback of being so busy, so connected, was that it was actually making her feel disconnected from herself. So, the answer to her existential dilemma isn't necessarily to do less, but to do more alone. To schedule recuperation as readily as she does activation. To indulge, as she put it, in time that is just for her, that is maybe a little aimless, that is free of reaction and rush. That's the kind of time that lets us actually feel gratitude for the beautiful, bursting at the seams lives we've created, rather than resenting them. That's the kind of time that helps us feel whole.
The irony in all this for any of us who value that sort of time spent in relationship to ourselves is that, like, well, I know in my case it makes me a lot, I'm more of an introvert maybe, but it makes me a lot more able to make a contribution to other people's lives, or to be a sort of present parent or spouse. It's like, in fact, when you do this for yourself, you end up serving other people anyway.
A huge thank you to Kate and Oliver for joining me today. We'll link to Oliver's book and the last time he was on the show in our episode notes. Check it out. Also, we sent 2 of our producers, Joel and Rosie, to the art museum to try out a version of the 3-hour art exercise. That episode is live for Slate Plus members. If you aren't already a Slate Plus member, you can subscribe now on Apple Podcasts by clicking Try Free at the top of the How To Show page, or visit slate.com/how-to+ to get access wherever you listen. The episode is available for you to listen to right now. We'll see you there. Do you have a problem that needs solving? Send us a note at howto@slate.com or leave us a voicemail at 646-495-4001, and we might have you on the show. And if you like what you heard today, please give us a rating and a review and send it to your busiest friend. That helps us help more people. How To is produced by Rosemary Belson with Kevin Bendis. Joel Meyer is our supervising producer. Merritt Jacob is senior technical director and composed our theme music. Charles Duhigg created the show. Carvel Wallace is my co-host. And I'm Courtney Martin. Thanks for listening.